Republican candidates who run for president have a very strange history where they love to pine for the good old days. Many folks may not remember when Bob Dole was running for president, he talked about the America that we used to be, and he was reminiscing about how we need to return back to those days. Ronald Reagan did the exact same thing. Donald Trump ran with his Make America Great Again. And so whenever these things come up, I always get a big kick out of them because you sort of go, what America are you talking about? Is it the same one we talking about that we experienced? So, folks, a few days ago, Nikki Haley tweeted this out. Do you remember when you were growing up? Do you remember how simple life was? How easy it felt? It was about faith, family, and country. We can have that again, but to do that, we must vote Joe Biden out. Hashtag, I know what the hell this hashtag is, RTM 2023. Got 32.8 million views on Twitter. And a lot of people, were commenting about this and commenting about how Nikki Haley clearly is brain dead, if you will, on these issues. This is how Karen Hunter responded. She goes, when was this? The 1950s? My grandmother couldn't vote. The 1960s? My mother couldn't vote until 1965. 1970s? Ehrlichman under Nixon flooding the black community with heroin. The 1980s, Reagan saying, hold my beer with crack. 1990s, Clinton with mandatory sentencing. When? Karen makes a great point. What was also interesting about this is that this is the same Nikki Haley whose daddy, let me say it again, whose daddy could not get a job in South Carolina, whose daddy had to go get a job. Matter of fact, let me just go ahead and just read this one here. Who gave Nikki Haley's dad first job opportunity as a college professor when he immigrated to America? It was Voorhees College in Bamberg, South Carolina, historically black college, founded by African-American woman named Elizabeth Evelyn Wright in 1897. Of course, Nikki never mentions that. True point. And then Nikki doesn't mention, okay, her mama making dresses and largely the black clientele. Wajahat Ali tweeted, Nikki's own immigrant father experienced racial discrimination. She has talked about this, but apparently all is forgotten when courting the vote of racist. Sound about right and sound about white. When you start breaking this thing down, what often happens is these candidates, again, want to create this whole different other world that we had simpler times and things were wonderful. Nikki, you're absolutely right. I remember when we could actually go to school and not get shot. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. The simpler times. The thing for me here, Rebecca, is these folks are delusional. But the reason we have to deal with this is because, and again, this is what I lay out in my book, White Fear. What we're talking about here there are largely white Republicans who hold the worldview. For instance, the Mercers who fund Breitbart. Robert Mercer actually has said and believes that the downfall of America began with the civil rights movement in the 1960s. There are people who actually believe that, America, we were a great nation, a wonderful nation, before those women and feminism came along. We were perfectly fine until the blacks, until they got their rights. Now, what's crazy here with the Nikki Haley, she's pining for she talks about faith, family, and country. It was black folks who changed the law that led to the immigration bill that allowed her mama and daddy to come to this country. This same nation wanted to keep folk like Nimrod Haley out of America. The hell is she talking about?
You know, Nikki Haley is just as delusional as that white Baptist Southern pastor who's going viral now because he's talking about, oh, well, slaves didn't march in the streets. Slaves didn't go to Washington, D.C. and demand their rights. That's not what the slaves did. They built a church and they worshiped God, and that got them out of slavery, right? She's just as delusional. And that's the lowest common denominator that she is actually campaigning towards. Because what Nikki doesn't want us to know is the small town in South Carolina that she was raised in was a segregated town. You had the black side, you had the white side, and was separated by railroad tracks. She also doesn't want folks to know that she tried to participate in a pageant growing up, but instead was told, well, it's segregated. We got the white awards for the little white girls. We got the black awards for the little black girls. Which one are you going to choose, Nikki? So for Nikki to now act as if that racism wasn't where she was when she grew up or things were just A-OK, it is such a cognitive dissonance. I mean, that itself should disqualify her for being so disconnected from her actually lived experience. It's very sad. And it's also unfortunate when you have racial and ethnic minorities in this country who choose to cast their lot with those who are anti-Black. And quite frankly, Nikki and Tim Scott are the latest examples of that.
I sit here and I watch this interesting little dance these folks do. I watch Scott, how they say things and you literally look at them going, girl, what you talking about? What America are you talking about?
Well,
and look, black folks, we had faith, we had family, we had country during Jim Crow, during lynchings. But it ain't like it was simpler times for us when we couldn't get jobs, couldn't eat, were attacked.
and we got the food scraps from the master's house, though. And we wouldn't have soul food if it wasn't for that, Roland. I mean, this you got to be thankful for, right? I think Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, and even white politicians who run for office on the Republican side, I think they're not just delusional. I think the black and brown people running on the GOP side have convinced themselves that this colorblind society has accepted them because they've reached a certain level, and therefore racism and oppression and racial violence hasn't touched them, nor can it, because they are either exceptions to the rule or the rule that should be. They've convinced themselves of this, and as a result, that's the story, because that's how they get elected. And they can convince white Republicans that it's okay to be East Indian, it's okay to be black from South Carolina, because I'm just like you. I just happen to be a little darker than you. They really believe an electorate is going to vote for them because it's okay, because we can identify with one another other than on the race piece. And I'm not going to talk about racial oppression and the history of black people in this country. And as long as I don't want to talk about it, then white America doesn't want to talk about it. So then I'm an acceptable Negro or an acceptable East Indian, and I want your vote. And if I get voted in, then the GOP can say, let's celebrate diversity, because this isn't Black Lives Matter. These are people of color who have pulled themselves up by the bootstraps and made the American dream work for them, and they can make it work for us, because other than that color issue, we're the same, and our experiences have been the same, and therefore it's okay to be the acceptable Negro, to be accepted and to be integrated into white people and to get their vote and to love America for all it is, not what it promised or its broken promises, but for what it's been to white America and our efforts to be just like them. Therefore, vote for me. It's complete bullshit.
And here's my deal, Robert. My deal is just, look, I understand you're trying to be aspirational, things along those lines. But don't be so stupid where you act as if we did not have racial terror in America.
Right.
Where we literally had laws that were targeting black people on the local, state, federal level, school board. I mean, we could go on and on and on, but the simpler times.
Lynching.
The simpler
They lynched us.
Robert, the simpler times in life.
Look, Roland, this is what I'm going to
When was life so simple for black people? Robert, go ahead.
Look, Roland, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go over to India. I'm going to run for prime minister there against Modi. I'm going to say, don't you miss the simpler times under British rule when there was a Raj that separated us, when they partitioned us between Pakistan and India and Bangladesh, when they stole all of our resources? Don't you miss the good old days of the monarchy, of the East India Trading Company, the East Netherlands Trading Company, where we had no rights and we were fighting for just simple humanity? Nobody would try this anywhere else. This is the Republicans tried to go back to this conceptualization of nostalgia. Nostalgia, the Greek word, meaning longing for home. This idea that time papers over all of the rough edges, and all people will see is apple pie, baseball, picket fences, and mom calling their name to the yard. That's why they call it the grand old party. They have old ideas, and it doesn't make any sense to be conservative if you ain't got nothing to conserve. Black folks are coming from a place where we don't have things we want to conserve. We want to progress and go forward. We want to go from where we were to where we don't want to go back to where we came from. I'm not trying to go back and be Jackie Robinson again. That doesn't sound like a fun administration to me. And I think Republicans are going to need to come up with better ideas, better thoughts, better plans. Nikki Haley was the UN secretary. Why the hell isn't she running on foreign policy? Why is she doing this whole nostalgia, Betty Crocker, apple pie, baseball thing? It's not effective. It's not working. And then Tim Scott, of all people, you're running around here. Why would you debase yourself like that to be at 1% in the polls? Why would you be sauce-chewing across the stage to have 99% of Republicans saying we will not vote for you? You have somebody who was impeached twice, who is currently facing 70 felony charges, and he is beating your ass by 50 plus points. Why would you sell yourself out for that? I can understand if you're winning, but let's say you're like neck and neck. I might win this thing. I just got to go sauce you a little bit. Okay, fine. Go do the little man tan, sleep and eat. No, you are doing all that now, and you are at 1% in the damn polls. Imagine you have already sold everything that you have, including your very blackness and your soul, and you get 1%, and you're still out there. It's a ridiculous idea.
Yeah, but Roland,
but this is all Scott. 20 seconds, literally. Scott, 20 seconds, quick, go.
What are you black people so mad about? This country's been good to you all. Why do you always have to take the negative in America versus the positive? And these black people in the GOP are thinking about positive white America and not the negative. This country been good to you all, and all you Negroes do is complain. What's your response to that, Roland?
I didn't even waste my time with responding to that.